and I never liked you. You understand me?
These videos are not for children. If you are a children, then piss off.
I hate this channel.
Hey there, I'm the SIJW Infuso. And every wrestling mark should know that in wrestling, some rivalries happen on screen and others happen off screen. But the best ones happen on both. Take for example the historic rivalry between Bret the Hitman Hart and the Heartbreak Kid Shawn Michaels. Another great example of this is the feud between Goldberg and Le Champion Chris Jericho. It all began in WCW in 1998. Goldberg had already made his name known, becoming a main event player and one of the quickest rising stars in all of wrestling. In just a year's time, he debuted to the sounds of a thunderous crowd, solidified himself with one of the industry's greatest undefeated streaks it's ever seen, became WCW United States Champion, and soon after, WCW World Heavyweight Champion. He was quite possibly the most dominant and strongly booked wrestler in the company at the time. And I can't name too many men or women who had a better first year in pro wrestling than him. The man became an icon instantly, and led to a lot of fights between friends over who got to play as Goldberg when they played WCW games. Some of my previous friendships would have ended there, but luckily I'm more of a Scott Hall guy myself, so. Meanwhile, Chris Jericho was making an impact in the secondary divisions in the company. He wasn't the Y2J fans would come to know and love, but he was definitely on his way there. The Ayatollah of rock and rolla was the star of the mid-card back in the day. He was one of the most entertaining and charismatic men ever relegated to the role of curtain jerker. Whether it was him telling corny jokes or throwing temper tantrums, Jericho was continually demanding attention from WCW audiences. And he used to be one of my favorite parts of the show at the time. Seriously, if you didn't happen to see this portion of his career, I would highly suggest taking a look back because you're really missing out. A lot of the time people say that WCW overlooked Jericho, and maybe in terms of being a main eventer they did, but the guy was a 4-time Cruiserweight champion and a 1-time television champion, so obviously they had some stock in him. During his television title run, Chris Jericho started calling out the World Heavyweight Champion, Bill Goldberg. And he did it a lot.
To me, you're just another guy who got into this business way too easily. You've been given way too much in way too short of a time. You're a great champion. I am a greater champion. You're not even gold. You're just green.
Jericho would mock Goldberg in various ways on episodes of Nitro and even sometimes at pay-per-views, trying to duplicate his entrance, complete with personal security guards, or intentionally flubbing up his name.
I respect Bill Greenberg.
And I just want to say from experience, people don't usually like when you do that. And even going as far to face a miniature Goldberg live at the 1998 Fall Brawl event. The television champion continued to call out and belittle Goldberg in every way possible on a weekly basis, trying to get his attention and trying to ignite a feud with WCW's top talent.
The bell has sounded and we're in the midst of a count here, guys.
Ring the bell. Ring the bell for what? Jericho thinks he's won the match from the Invisible Man.
You're gonna have to see if you can break my streak. Jericho 4, Goldberg nothing.
Unfortunately, in real life, Goldberg wasn't really all that receptive to that idea, not wanting to work with Jericho because he felt that he was too small. Some say Goldberg was given this advice from either Hulk Hogan or Kevin Nash. Others say that Eric Bischoff flat out nixed the angle. Regardless, whatever the reason was, Goldberg made it clear that he hadn't planned on working with the now AEW star in a big capacity match. It was instead decided that the Jericho-Goldberg hype would become build-up for a throwaway squash match on an episode of Nitro, something Jericho disagreed with heavily. From my understanding, Chris didn't expect to win, and maybe he didn't even expect to have what one would consider a competitive match. But he did, rightfully so, think that the angle would be best served as an attraction for a pay-per-view. Which makes sense, both were recognizable names in the company at the time, both were title holders, and both were loved on some level by the Nitro audience.
Television champion, and you know what that means? Thank you.
It's a real shame this angle never came to fruition in the company. Instead, it would end with Goldberg eventually acknowledging Jericho's challenges and spearing him on the entrance ramp of an episode of Nitro, thus ending their alleged feud. Not long after, Jericho would join the WWF, sometimes citing this incident as a prime factor in his decision. Upon joining the rival team, he became one of the company's top prospects, engaging in feuds and matches with the likes of The Rock, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Kurt Angle, Chris Benoit, and of course, X-Pac. He'd been given title runs with the company's Intercontinental and European Championships, and even managed to become the company's first ever undisputed champion, winning and combining the WCW World Heavyweight Championship and the WWF Championship following the invasion angle. Meanwhile, Goldberg stayed silent, leaving the industry while he was out on an injury, before finally joining the WWE in 2003. Yeah, no, I'm sorry for the Dr. Seuss shit, none of that was supposed to rhyme. And much like Jericho, he'd interact with The Rock on his first night. I mean, that doesn't really have anything to do with anything, it's just, it's a little something I noticed. Goldberg was built up in a similar manner to how he was in WCW. He was given an undefeated streak, and was constantly shown in a dominant light. The biggest difference to how he was booked in WCW and how he was booked in WWE is that in WWE he was now being asked to put on 13 to 14 minute matches on a weekly basis. Something he wasn't known to do in WCW. I mean, the vast majority of this guy's career can be described with enter ring, finisher, go home. Now, behind the scenes, upon Goldberg signing with the WWE, Vince had asked Chris to work with the struggling Goldberg, which Chris agreed to, taking it as a personal challenge. Though he admits he doesn't know if Vince was ever truly made aware of their past heat, or he just wanted to help break him into the WWE style, being that Chris also came from WCW. Jericho agreed to try and welcome and work with Goldberg, but he'd find that a little bit harder than he initially thought, as on Goldberg's first night in the company, the two managed to get into a fight. Jericho was surprisingly teamed with usual rival Triple H, taking on the team of Shawn Michaels and Booker T. After the match commenced, Jericho made his way to the back, where he was informed by the Hurricane that Goldberg had been talking trash throughout his match to Kevin Nash. And for this story, let's go to Jericho's own words in Undisputed.
Hello. As you can clearly tell from my Canadian accent, my name is Christopher Jericho. You may remember me from such wonderful catchphrases as El Champione, the Index of Irvine, and who could forget? Would you like some champagne? Only a small amount though, as I understand that you are driving. I'm here to recount a tale about myself and William S. Goldbergs of the family Goldbergs. Not that one. This is from my book, Undisputed. I marched straight into the dressing room and saw Nash sitting in the corner like a giant praying mantis, acting like he owned the place, while Billy Boy sat across from him with a self-indulgent smile on his face. Throwing caution to the wind, I stood in front of him and stared directly into his eyes. I heard you were saying some stuff about me during my match. I don't know if you realize it, but things have changed. This isn't WCW. If you have something to say to me, say it to my face. Goldberg gave a shaky laugh and said,
I didn't say anything about you.
My Goldberg impression is impeccable. Bullshit! I know you did. Something snapped in the Burgermeister and he jumped to his feet.
What about all the stuff you were saying about me on the internet?
Internet? Internet? You've got to be kidding me. I don't spend enough time on the internet to check out Club Jenna properly, let alone talk shit about Bill Goldeye. What are you talking about? A vein in his neck popped out like a worm as he shouted back,
Matt today told me that you had said stuff about me on the internet.
I looked at him in disbelief and said, listen, Bill, it's simple. I could be your best friend or your worst enemy in this company. We're probably going to be working with each other at some point, so I could either make you look like $1 million or make you look like shit, and you wouldn't know the difference. We're all here to make money and do business together, so just relax.
You never wanted to do the job for me in WCW. You're a prima donna.
You're totally wrong about the... Before I could finish my sentence, Goldfish grunted like a Neanderthal, the vein in his neck now resembling a corpulent slug, and grabbed me by the throat. Once Goldster made his move, I reacted the only way I knew how. I swatted his hand off my throat and gave him a two-handed push to the chest. He rushed forward with his head down and tried to tackle me like an ex-NFL lineman that he was. I stepped to the side like the world's worst matador and grabbed him in a front face lock. It was the only shoot hold I knew, one that harkened back to the days bouncing at Malarkey's in Calgary. I think I surprised the shit out of him with my lethal hold, and it was enough to power him down to the ground, applying pressure because I knew that if I pushed his throat into my chest long enough, he might pass out. I really hoped that he would go to sleep, because I was that sure that he was going to fire up and kick the shit out of me. I mean, come on, have you ever seen this guy? He's massive. I was getting cocky at this point because he wasn't moving. In the back of my mind, I still had the idea that he was going to morph into this savage animal, throw me off and draw and quarter me. But he never did. It seemed like Goldschlager was all smoke and mirrors. Maybe he'd always gotten by on the intimidation factor and had never been tested. Maybe he was being nice and didn't want to fight back because he was a new kid on the block. If that was the case, the muscle-bound Joey McIntyre was getting manhandled. I egged him on as I crossed my legs around his midsection. "Come on, Mr. Shooter! Try and get out of this one!" He got to his feet again and was busted through the doors at the back of the dressing room, straight into the hallway filled with surprised fans who would get a bonus match that night. You're welcome, by the way. We scuffed back into the dressing room, and we were finally broken up by Arn Anderson, Terry Taylor, Hurricane, Christian, and Booker T. Nash Mantis continued to sit in his chair in the corner of the room, watching the festivities. Goldfinger and I were separated. As Christian and Hurricane were restraining me, they were inadvertently selling me up to be murdered at the same time. Because when Goldsworthy broke free of the pack, they still had my arms pinned to my sides. "Let go! Let go! He's trying to kill me!" I screamed, closing my eyes and preparing to have my face caved in. They realized what was going on and let me go at the last minute, but it was too late. He broke through and reared his fist back. I tensed up and prepared for him to knock my block up, but he started pulling my hair instead. "Dirty fighter! Dirty fighter!" I couldn't believe that the mighty Bergold was tugging at my hair like a 5-year-old during playtime. What was up with this guy? I figured if he couldn't have knocked me out yet, he was never going to. So I pried his hand out of my hair and pie-faced him as hard as I could. He stumbled back and stared at me in surprise. "I'm done with this bitch fight!" And I screamed, "What the hell is wrong with you, man? You're acting like a goof!" Goldrush screamed back,
Your mother is a f***ing goof.
Booker T got the most quizzical look on his face as he chewed on the unlit cigar he always seemed to have in his mouth and said, "Hold up! Did you just say his mother is a f***ing goof?" We continued jaw-jacking back and forth until we both calmed down. We were separated into our respective corners, and after a few minutes I walked back over to Bilbo and said matter-of-factly, "Here's the deal. You can shake my hand right now. We can forget about this, or we can come to work and do this every single week. Your call." Go-Go Boy looked me in the eye, stuck out his hand to shake mine, and we called it a truce. This reading is proudly brought to you by my new express massage parlors, A Little Bit of the Rubbly. Just go to this website, type in this code, and as a new customer, you'll receive a free happy ending. And remember, over 6% of our employees have a work visa. I hope I'm getting paid for this.
Now, it should be noted that Goldberg disputes that that's how this whole situation went down. And yeah, if I got my ass kicked by a guy half my size, I'd probably say the same thing. But it should also be noted that everybody who witnessed or heard about this incident seems to take the side of Jericho in his telling of events. Surprisingly, the two went on to eventually become cordial and work together professionally in an angle that saw Goldberg and Jericho finally face each other at 3 different pay-per-views. An angle which would see Jericho hire his best bud and fellow Canadian, Lance Storm, to try and run over Goldberg. Chris, it's a wrestling match, man. It's not that deep. There's no reason to hire a hitman. It's a little bit much. Throughout the feud, Jericho was shown to still be jealous and maybe even a little bit intimidated of Goldberg's presence. And truth be told, they worked pretty well together. The angle surprisingly went over well. I mean, I'm not gonna sit here and tell you that this was Austin versus Rock, but their matches and the storyline was overall pretty enjoyable. And personally speaking, I know that not everybody would agree with me here, but I actually think his feud with Jericho was some of his best work in the WWE. Anyway, that was the story of Goldberg versus Chris Jericho. I hope you guys enjoyed, and, well, let's face it, if you didn't, you're gonna let me know one way or another, aren't you?
It was a violation of my rights as a forklift driver.
Tarquin! Tarquin! Could you answer me a question? Why does this laptop smell like horse?
Well, let me tell you something, brother. You're watching the social injustice warrior, V Infuso's channel, dude. So if you like the words that came out of his mouth hole, and you too want to become a V-tard, don't forget to like and subscribe, and click that little bell icon to get updates and notifications. Ooh, tell him what up, Mach. Ooh, yeah. Follow the man on Twitter, yeah, because we all know it's not stalking if it's on the internet, yeah. Join the madness by joining the Discord, and if you have a moment of time and a free $1 to spare, head over to the SIJW's Patreon, dig it, where you can request videos, get exclusive videos, and early access to content, yeah. Or go down to PayPal, where you can buy the shirts, brother. But most importantly, just remember, if you're not tuning in, then you're missing out.